Look around whatever room you're in right now and count the things made of wood, which means there is very likely a lost chapter of human invention, an entire technology, sitting in a blind spot we can barely dig into. The floor, maybe. A chair, a spoon in a drawer, a pencil, a door. Now imagine that in 100,000 years, every soft thing you own has quietly rotted away to nothing, and the only objects left for someone to dig up are the ones made of metal and stone. They'd find your keys, a kitchen knife, a few coins, and from that little pile they would try to reconstruct your entire life. That is almost exactly the trick that has been played on us. We call the longest chapter of the human story the Stone Age. Millions of years of it. But if you could actually walk into one of those ancient camps, most of what you would see in people's hands wouldn't be stone at all. It would be wood. We named the whole era after the one material that happened to survive. And every so often, in a peat bog or a buried lake bed, a single piece of it comes back to us. Here's the thing you have to understand about how we know the deep past. Stone is basically immortal. A sharpened flint dropped in the dirt 2 million years ago is still a sharpened flint today. So when archaeologists dig, stone tools are what they find. By the thousands, by the millions. And it is dangerously easy to slide from stone is what survives to stone is what they mostly used. Those are not the same statement. One is about the tools. The other is about the trash heap of time and what it just happens to keep. Start with the reason this is even a mystery. Wood rots. Left out in the open, a wooden tool is gone, eaten by fungus and bacteria and beetles, in years or decades, not millennia. For a piece of worked wood to survive for tens or hundreds of thousands of years, the conditions have to be almost freakishly perfect. A waterlogged bog that seals out oxygen, bone-dry desert, volcanic ash, permanent ice. That is why, out of millions of years of human life, we have only a tiny handful of wooden objects at all. Not because people didn't make them, because the earth almost never keeps them. Archaeologists even have a name for this hole in the record. They call it the missing half of the Stone Age toolkit. Put it in numbers and it lands harder. We have dug up literally millions of Stone Age stone tools. Worked wooden objects from before 40,000 years ago? You could very nearly count them in the dozens. That is not a difference in how much people used each material. That is a difference in what the dirt is willing to hand back. When one of those pieces does claw its way back to us, it quietly rewrites what we thought these people could do. Go to a site in Israel called Gesher Benot Ya'aqov, on the edge of an ancient lake, where waterlogged mud sealed away plant material for the better part of 1 million years. In 1991, researchers including Naama Goren-Inbar described, in the Journal of Human Evolution, a fragment of a wooden plank from the site, more than 780,000 years old, carrying a smooth, deliberate polish. Somebody had taken a piece of wood and worked its surface until it shone. That is the oldest shaped worked wood we have ever found anywhere on Earth. And it was made not by us, but by a far older kind of human, in a world of hand axes and mammoth-sized elephants, hundreds of thousands of years before our species had a face. Now the picture gets bigger, and a lot stranger. In 2023, an archaeologist named Larry Barham of the University of Liverpool published a discovery in the journal Nature from Kalambo Falls in Zambia. In the waterlogged sand beside the river, his team uncovered 2 large logs, one lying across the other, joined where someone had cut a deliberate notch so the 2 pieces locked together. They dated it to at least 476,000 years ago. This is not a spear. This is not even a tool, exactly. This is joinery. Someone shaped one log to fit another, on purpose, to build something larger than either piece. And I want to be honest with you here, because it matters. We do not know exactly what they were building. A walkway? A raised platform to keep them off the wet ground? The footing of a shelter? We are reading intention from a single cut notch, and not every archaeologist agrees you can push the evidence that far. But if Barham is right, it means real carpentry, joining wood to wood, is older than our entire species. And consider the leap this represents. Before Kalambo Falls, the oldest known wooden structure of any kind was only about 9,000 years old. This one shoved that date back by well over 400,000 years, in a single dig. Through most of the last 100 years, the oldest known worked wooden tool wasn't any of these. It was a single broken spear point, dug out of a beach at Clacton-on-Sea, in England, back in 1911, by an amateur prehistorian named Samuel Hazzledine Warren. It is around 400,000 years old, carved from yew, and its tip was patiently whittled to a point with a stone flake. There's been a long, friendly argument about what it actually was, whether a hunting spear, a snow probe, or a digging tool, but nobody doubts the skill in it. For decades, that splinter of yew sat almost alone in the record, one piece of proof that these people were shaping wood with real care, while everything else they ever carved had simply dissolved back into the soil. And then, in the 1990s, a German coal mine cracked that blind spot wide open. At a site called Schöningen, archaeologists lifted an astonishing collection of wooden objects out of an ancient lakeshore, and in 2024, a team led by the archaeologist Dirk Leder published a full study of the assemblage in the journal PNAS. Set aside, for a moment, that some of these objects were weapons. Just look at the craft. There are 187 wooden artifacts. Whoever made them knew their materials cold. They chose slim, straight spruce for most tools, and switched to tougher pine when a job demanded it. They carved points from the dense wood at the base of the stem, and deliberately worked around the weak, pithy core that runs down a trunk's center. They read the grain. They split timber lengthwise to make fresh tools out of the halves, then sharpened them. Alongside the famous spears, the same study cataloged dozens of humbler pieces too, split-wood tools for everyday domestic jobs like scraping hides and butchering, exactly the kind of boring daily gear that almost never survives anywhere. This is not somebody hacking at a random branch. This is a workshop's worth of knowledge, 300,000 years old, about which tree, which part of it, and which direction to cut, for which task. And modern researchers only manage to tease all of that out using 3D microscopes and CT scanners. Technology from our own century, reading craftsmanship from 100,000 generations back. There is an even more surprising trick buried in the wood, and it's the part almost nobody talks about. At a site in Tuscany called Poggetti Vecchi, a team led by the archaeologist Biancamaria Aranguren found a set of digging sticks, roughly 171,000 years old, made by early Neanderthals. They were carved from boxwood, which is dense, hard, and genuinely miserable to work by hand, and the makers chose it anyway, precisely because it is tough and long-lasting. But here is the clever part. In her 2018 study, published in PNAS, Aranguren's team showed the wood had been deliberately charred, run through fire, to make it easier to scrape into shape and to harden the finished point. That is, fire being used not to keep warm and not to cook, but to manufacture. Wood plus fire, as a genuine production process, long before modern humans ever walked into Europe. To really feel how badly this all skews the record, stop looking at the deep past for a second and look at people alive much more recently. Study almost any hunter-gatherer group of the last few centuries, from the San of southern Africa to Aboriginal Australians, and you find the same thing. The overwhelming majority of their equipment, the bows, the digging sticks, the spear shafts, the traps, the containers, the handles, is made of wood, plant fiber, hide, and bone. Stone is a small minority of the kit, and very often it is simply the blade you use to make everything else. By some estimates, the perishable share of a toolkit like that runs well past 90%. Now bury one of those camps for 300,000 years, let all the soft material quietly rot, and a future archaeologist digs up a thin scatter of stone flakes and calls them, what else? A Stone Age people. The bias is not a small correction at the edges. It is very nearly the whole picture. It helps to remember where the name itself even came from. In the 1820s, a Danish museum curator named Jürgensen Thomsen needed a way to organize his collection, so he divided the deep past into 3 ages by material: stone, then bronze, then iron. It was a filing system, a genuinely brilliant one, but it was built entirely around the hard, shiny objects that make it into museum cases. Wood was never really in the running, because wood was almost never in the cases to begin with. So here's the reframe worth carrying out of this. We did not name it the Stone Age because stone was the most important material in these people's daily lives. We named it the Stone Age because stone is the material that lasts. Turn that around and the whole story tilts. The first tools, and for most of our existence very probably the most used tools, were almost certainly wood, the spear you actually hunt with. The stick you lever your dinner out of the ground with. The handle that turns a sharp rock into an axe you can swing without slicing open your own hand. Take the wood away and a flint hand axe is just a stone that cuts you as easily as anything else. In fact, turn the logic all the way around. A great many stone tools were made mainly in order to make the wooden ones. The flake was the means. The finished spear or handle or digging stick was the whole point. That's not the Stone Age. That's a wooden age with a stone highlight reel, and we have been staring at the highlight reel this entire time, mistaking it for the whole film. Line it up and look at the run of it. A polished plank in Israel, 780,000 years old. Interlocking notched logs in Zambia, 476,000. A whittled yew spear in England, 400,000. A whole woodworking kit in Germany, 300,000. Fire-hardened boxwood digging sticks in Italy, 171,000. 5 near miracles of preservation, scattered across 3 continents, each one a narrow keyhole view into a technology that was once everywhere and is now almost entirely gone. And you are surrounded by the descendants of that technology, so completely that you've stopped seeing it at all. The wooden spoon in the kitchen drawer, the pencil on the desk, the chair holding you up right now, the frame of the door, the shaft of the broom in the closet. Every single one of them is the visible tip of a habit that is at least 780,000 years old. Older than our species. Older than language. Our ancestors were woodworkers before they were almost anything else we would recognize as ourselves. We just cannot dig most of it up, because the earth, gently and quietly, composted the single greatest invention of the Stone Age. So the next time you pick up something wooden, smooth and warm and worn to the shape of a hand, hold on to it a second longer than you need to. You are holding the oldest technology there is. All the research is linked in the description.